Hello, I'm Annette Young and welcome to the 51%, a show about women reshaping our world. Coming up, the Pakistani female police officer who captured headlines after saving a woman from an angry mob following blasphemy accusations. This in a country where policewomen are few and far between. And most of us have heard about the glass ceiling, but do you know anything about the glass cliff? UK author Sophie Williams is here with me today to talk about the phenomenon where women are frequently hired to lead organisations on the cusp of complete failure. Also making waves, the Ugandan swimmer who's aiming for gold at this year's Paralympic Games here in Paris. But first, and recently, a local policewoman in Pakistan attracted global attention after coming to the rescue of a woman being accused of blasphemy by an angry mob at a Lahore market. Since then, she's become a role model for millions of young women in this highly conservative traditional society, as our team on the ground report.
In Lahore, the police department is organising a march to raise public awareness on women's rights. The centre of attention is Police Assistant Superintendent Sherbano Naqvi. These journalists are here for her.
We will no longer tell women what they must wear, what they must do, where they can go. We will no longer tell them anything. Never again will a girl going to school be harassed, and never again will men look askance at women at the market.
On February 25th, the assistant superintendent became a hero by rescuing this young woman from a mob in a Lahore market. She was accused of insulting the Quran for wearing a dress with Arabic calligraphy printed on it. But there was nothing religious about the text. It was only the word halwa, which means pretty in Arabic. Sherbano Naqvi managed to escort her to safety amid cries of hatred. In Pakistan, the issue of blasphemy is very sensitive. In the past, several people have been lynched by angry mobs. The police officer's bravery received widespread admiration in this conservative Islamic country.
She gives us a lot of hope. Every woman should stand up for her rights. Girls like us, we're always very afraid, and she gives us courage. She's a great source of inspiration.
Women represent more than half of the population in Pakistan. Still, they make up less than 3% of the police force. This police academy trains hundreds of police officers every year. Recruiting women into law enforcement remains a huge challenge. Many families encourage their daughters to marry young and do not expose them to the outside world. These young women are exceptions.
Left. Forward. For us, women are in no way lesser than men. We are giving them an advanced level of training, from physical combat to shooting. And after the training, they return to their respective districts and carry out their duties.
In my family, women who work in the police are frowned upon. But since I've been here, my cousins have all applied for the same training.
These police women, whose actions promote bravery and emancipation, nevertheless struggle to break the prejudices of the patriarchal Pakistani society.
Now, we've all heard of the glass ceiling, but what do you know about the glass cliff? The term was coined some 20 years ago and describes how women are far more likely to break through the glass ceiling and rise to a top job only when the risk of failure is high and men are far less interested in taking on the position. Think of Theresa May, who became the UK's second female Prime Minister just after the Brexit vote. Or more recently, Linda Yaccarino, who was made Chief Executive of X in 2023, a company at the time whose workforce had been gutted, was facing rapidly declining ad revenues, not to mention an erratic owner, Elon Musk. UK author Sophie Williams, who's worked in high-ranking positions at Netflix and advertising agencies, has just written a book about it, entitled, appropriately enough, The Glass Cliff: Why Women in Power Are Undermined and How to Fight back, and I'm delighted to say that she joins me in the studio today. Sophie, thank you so much for your time. What inspired you to write this book?
So I really stumbled across the glass cliff as a phenomenon completely by accident. So I was researching so the glass cliff, this book is my third book. And when I was researching for my second book, I was really looking for stories of success. I was really looking to find stories of women in leadership who've come in and really, smashed it out of the park. I was really looking for stories that could inspire other women and myself when I was, writing this book and telling these stories. But instead of finding these stories of women being given these opportunities and, really having the tools and the time that they need to be able to make the change that they've been brought in to make, instead of finding that success story of life beyond the glass ceiling, what I found was the glass cliff.
Is it a phenomenon that just impacts women, or are other people also affected by it as well?
So the initial research just looked at women, and that was in response to a newspaper article that claimed that women on boards and women in senior positions in businesses were wreaking havoc in terms of share price and performance. And so the initial research did focus on women. But as you said, that research was initially 20 years ago. So what we've seen in that time since then is that we have, zoomed out a little bit to get the bigger picture. And what we see is, whilst it does impact women, we also see the glass cliff playing out in the experiences of Black and global majority men. And what we see when we think really intersectionally is we see that people who hold dual or multiple areas of marginalisation, for example, people who hold both womanness and non-whiteness, we find they face a double jeopardy when it comes to the glass cliff.
Why is it, Sophie, that organisations at critical times, when clearly there's an enormous mess, suddenly wake up to the fact, this is the time where we should bring a woman in to lead the organisation?
I don't think, in fairness to people, that they're necessarily doing it mindfully or deliberately. I think what often happens is we've all been socialised with this idea that women are soft, that they're nurturing, that they're caregiving. And so when a business has been through a really difficult time, what we often see is them, or the people who make those hiring decisions, suddenly thinking, we need some soft skills. We need someone who's going to make people feel better. And obviously, for women to be in the running for these opportunities, they need to be fantastic, right? They need to be proven quantities, proven leaders just as much as anyone else. So the real shame of the glass cliff is, even though we have these women with demonstrable ability to create transformational change, they're not brought in to make that change. We often see them being brought in to reinvigorate or to re-energise or to just re-motivate a team that's gone through a difficult time.
And does it only happen at the top, or does it happen at other levels of management?
So the research initially just looked at the top, but in the 20 years that sort of additional research has been done by all kinds of people all over the world, they've really broadened the sort of perspective of that. So we've seen people look at sports teams, we've seen people look, like you mentioned in the intro, at like prime ministerships. So really, it could be anything as big as a head of state or anything as sort of junior and sort of the beginning of your career as just taking on that first leadership, that first opportunity where you are visible. And it is kind of about that visibility. When we put these women in these positions where they have extra scrutiny on them, we tend to see that that opportunity is only given when the chance of failure is heightened.
So it begs the question, what needs to be done to demolish the glass cliff?
So much. But in terms of like achievable things that we can do, we need to recontextualise how we think of women. So if we have women who we know are excellent leaders, but we only give them the chance to show that when their chances of success are so limited by a crisis that they have to deal with, what we do is we just reinforce that message that, women aren't good leaders. We've tried them time and time again, but they never work. But we don't tell the beginning of that story. We don't tell the story of the context that she inherited. We also need to move away from this really gendered idea of what women are or what they should be, what they represent to us in society. Because when a man comes into that top level, comes into a leadership role, we don't expect him to be your dad. But when someone who is female comes into that position, what we see often is we have this expectation that she'll be mother, that she'll take care of us. And we see that in the ways that we treat women so often, women are disproportionately given office housework. They're disproportionately given these invisible roles. So we see women constantly taking on all of these additional, unspoken, unrecognised, unrewarded burdens. So we just need to reassess what we think women are for. And if we can agree that they're for more than being mothers, then we can start to address that in the workplace and start to eradicate the glass cliff.
Sophie Williams, it's been great speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Next to our ongoing series of reports featuring the female athletes heading to Paris this year, this time we meet a young Ugandan swimmer who was born without a right forearm and set to compete at this year's Paralympic Games.
Diving into the deep end despite her disability. Today, Husna Kukundakwe is a professional swimmer representing her country at the world's most prestigious sporting event, the Paralympics in Paris, after the Tokyo Games 3 years ago.
My main goal going there was to inspire people with or without disabilities, especially children. Imagine reaching that highest athlete level at the age of 14. It was such a huge achievement.
Born without her right forearm and with an impairment to her left hand, Husna was 3 years old when she tested the waters for the first time. She knew her decision would make waves starting at home, but she never let that stop her.
I just love being in the water. Of course, in the beginning, my mom wasn't supportive about it because she was worried that I would not be able to swim. But of course, I kept being stubborn and kept going back, even though she told me not to. So eventually she had to give in.
According to Uganda's state-run Equal Opportunities Commission, people with disabilities still face stigma and discrimination and are often denied access to public services such as health and education. Husna is a youth ambassador for the International Paralympics Committee, and as such, every day is a watershed moment.
And that's all for this edition. But in the meantime, we would, of course, love to hear from you. So do reach out with your suggestions via Facebook, Instagram or X. So until our next show, bye for now.